It's engineered for perfection. Every contour sculpted for uninterrupted motion. Wider, smoother, more refined, and drives like a dream. Introducing the 2026 E470. Experience the difference.
Very happy. I mean, I love a happy ending. That's it.
There's a clip.
Not like
Hey, it's That Car Show, and tonight Lindsay and I are joined by Steve Schlosser, author of the new book, Time Attack, a car-centric racing novel. If you are anything like us, and I think you are, you'd probably read more books if only they were filled with cars, M3s and Lotus Exiges and Corvettes and Porsches and the kinds of stuff that fills our own garages. We do talk about the book, of course, but we cover a lot of other stuff too. Track days, tuning, and the power of authenticity. This is a fun one. Time Attack is a good read, and Steve's a nice guy. I think you're going to enjoy the conversation, so stay tuned. It's That Car Show. Hey, it's That Car Show. Dan's away doing Dan things tonight, so it's me and Lindsay, and we are joined by Steve Schlosser, author of a new book aimed at enthusiast folks like us called Time Attack, a car-centric racing novel. Hey, Steve, how you doing?
I'm doing great. Thanks for having me on. Honestly.
Yeah, it's good to have you on. It pains me to admit at age 50 that I am not much of a reader anymore.
Okay.
And it's not just because I refuse to buy readers. It's just that it's, as you guys know, it's too easy just to grab your phone or turn on the TV. And I'm also a little embarrassed that I've gotten away from track driving in recent years. Life is busy. The track can be expensive. And I'm fortunate to have some really wonderful canyon roads, not too far from me. And Lindsay, I think, can say the same thing. But I will say that I read Time Attack in just a couple of days because it's unusual to find a book that incorporates M3s and Corvettes and GT3s and GR86s.
Going to the track.
How about the Lotus, right? The Lotus is getting in there.
Right. That was a great inclusion.
I mean, there were so many to choose from, but it was very engaging. And when I finished it, I was like, oh, that's right. I do love reading.
Yes. And,
so it's a great reminder. Thank you for the excuse to sit down and read a real book.
Yeah. I'm so glad you liked it. And, reading, just like being on the tracks, like riding a bike, right? You come back to it and you're like, wow. That wasn't scary. I did finish that book. It was so great. I did those laps. I did that session. Nobody died.
Yes,
right. Then I could do that again. Yeah.
Yes. And speaking of nobody died, I mean, Steve, Time Attack really is a cautionary tale.
A little bit. There's, it kind of started out, it's funny. When I set out with the mission of the book, one of the things that bothered me about like racing fictional media was it's all centered around crime. We love Fast and the Furious, right? But they're all criminals,
But they're such lovable criminals.
They're such lovable criminals.
Yeah.
And they're a family, okay? And you know what I said? I was trying to think of the plot to start it. What's the lesson learned to begin with? And I said, I guess I could start it here, but it's gonna be one and done. It's not gonna be this. I did 2 years at Lompoc or whatever the storyline is, and I need the character to. Yeah, true. And I need that character to kind of to grow and evolve, because you'd be surprised speaking with people into cars, track or not. A lot of them have done a couple overnight stints for street racing. I mean, literally, I had three or four people reach out to me. Yes, 3 or 4 people reach out to me, and they said, "How did you know I was in jail overnight?" Literally, my buddy, I chat with a friend all the time. He just had to do an overnight stint, like one day. And I was like.
You're like, I did not, but thank you for sharing. So how did you, what was the inspiration for the book? And it sounds like you started with kind of the mission of what you wanted to accomplish. I mean, can you share, I know you share this in the notes at the back of the book, and I really was drawn to that part of it. So can you kind of talk about what the goal was and then how you built the story around that, and what your inspiration was?
Sure. So, to start out, it's probably been like a decade for me where I've been dragging people to the track. Even when I had periods of myself where I was unable to go, I'm just so passionate about it. Like my best friend, Zach, my very good friend, Zach, who I credited in the book for kind of helping me, he was like a street motorcycle guy. And now he's entering CVMA, the racing course. And I'm always talking about the track and getting people to go to the track. And so it's something I'm very passionate about. And I was in the winter, Vince, I saw this video with Vince Zampella, if you remember his crash in his Ferrari on the Angeles Crest Highway. And I had been thinking about writing for a while. It had always been a little bit of an outlet for me in general. I've always liked writing. And, who has like more of anything than the founder of Infinity Ward, right? I had just watched him on like a YouTube video where he had bought a McLaren Solus, $4 million, like basically Formula One car, and then here he is. And it's so tragic. And when I lived in California, we used to ride all the time on Highway 94 and stuff. And, I saw a person crash and get hit by a car, and, that was it. And there had been stories where I had ridden with people, and then a couple months later, what happened to that guy? T-boned something, on going too fast. And so it's something that I rapidly grew so passionate about. And I just had this draw that I'm going to write about. I'm going to write a story, and I'm going to progress this just personal mission I've been on into a sincere effort. And I want to try to entertain people to get to the point where they say, maybe I could try that. And so it just started.
Yeah, you just decided, hey, I'm not busy enough. I should write a book.
It just, sometimes things just like explode out of you. I apologize to my wife a little bit because I went like full Hemingway with this. Like I started writing, and I had my friend Zach, and he read the first chapter. He's like, this is interesting, dude, keep going. And then I was writing 8 hours a day. I mean, I was like on weekends, I was like, hey, Kate, my wife, what are you doing? Do you want to like watch TV and maybe play The Sims a little bit or here and there? And I'd get out the laptop and I'd start writing. We do dog trials on the side where it's like dog agility, time attack for dogs.
You said dog trials?
Yeah. So this is like, have you ever seen agility with dogs, like jumps and tunnels?
This is not a judicial system thing.
No.
What is this?
He's sentencing dogs to hard time.
Yes,
that's right.
It's called a trial. It is a dog sport. Okay. And in this sport, you have a pre-set up course with obstacles.
Oh, sure.
It's just like time attack for cars. I know I'm pairing it, right?
That's amazing.
But it literally is. It's you and your dog in a ring. You get the only prior exposure you have is about 15 minutes to walk it and figure out how you're going to handle your dog.
Yeah.
And then one shot, one kill. You step up and you got to run the course and make the obstacles with them. And so we had a dog trial, and I'm out there with my laptop in between turns writing. It was exploding out of me.
Right.
And so I did it.
Wait, I want to know more about these dog trials. I mean, do you want like a dog with low center of gravity, like big paws, like what wins?
You want a very
well
balanced mid-engine dog.
We're going into the yes. You want a well balanced mid-engine dog. Okay, so how the classes go are by height classes. So there's height classes for the dogs, and then there's different ones. You can do one that's like the general agility class has all the obstacles. There's a teeter-totter and weave poles and all sorts of stuff. There's ones that's only jumps and tunnels, right? There's all sorts of different classes you can compete in, and then the dogs compete on a height basis. And I would say like the most popular dog is probably a border collie.
Okay.
But we have two Shelties, which are Shetland sheepdogs.
Oh, yeah.
You've heard of them. And then I also have a freak of the nature. She is a 70% Whippet and 30% Border Collie. So she's like a super smart speed missile.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. And now do you have the issues, or no, maybe I'm thinking of greyhounds where like if they get out, they just run. So you have to make sure they don't get out.
She's very fast. I trained her a lot on recall, so thankfully, yes.
It's fascinating to know what people do when they're not behind the wheel, and that is a first for us. So dog trials.
We were just at one this past weekend, actually, and I'm proud to say we took home 2 firsts, a second, and a third.
Congratulations.
Yeah, I love it.
Sounds like a successful weekend.
Yeah, and it's good to know border collies are the Miata of the
Okay, hold on a second. I have thought about this.
Okay.
I have thought about this. Okay, so border collies actually totally not the Miata.
Okay.
Because here's the deal with border collies. They're very smart. They're very fast. They take these big leaping turns. They're very hard to keep up with.
Okay.
So I've always thought border collies, like maybe you put that into like a Shelby GT500.
Okay.
It's so much power, but you're lacking on the track, and the second you get behind it, it's thump, right?
Yeah.
Shelties, like my dogs, 100% Porsches. Like running my dog, he's not the fastest runner. He's so easy to handle. Like, and he actually beat my Whippet Border Collie, even though she's so much faster. right? Because he's more consistent and I can get where I need to be and make his lines smoother, right? He beat her by a couple seconds. So, things like
That's
that.
hilarious.
I thought about this. So I was like, oh yeah, this is the analogy,
Probably is not always the answer.
This is the stuff that I love, where you're like, I didn't know that I was going to be applying the lessons that you learn at the track to dog agility track. I mean, it's like the number of things in life where you're doing some form of traffic management, is funny, where I'm like, I didn't think that that's part of skiing, but it is.
That's true. Yeah. That's true. Everything, when you find passion in it, everything relates. One last thing. So my dog, the Whippet Border Collie, 100% a Formula One car. Like, I don't even know what I'm doing. I'm terrible at handling her. We finished the course. She's slower because she's just doing. I'm catching up with her.
I love it. I love it.
That's amazing.
Yeah. You never know where the conversation's going to go,
I know.
We should probably bring it back to the book, and this is the book there, Time Attack, Steve Schlosser. Great cover, by the way.
Thank you.
It's what you want to see on the shelf, right, when you're looking for
books.
I
got together with, so the editor of my book, here's a really cool story about it. When I was looking for an editor, you go to the best way to do it is like there's a website called EFA, and this is like the association that people who copy edit professionally go to, and you can see their rates, and so you kind of post an ad. Here's my book and stuff, and I got reached out to, and her name is Chris Knight. I credit her in the book, and she says, I can't believe this is like the biggest thing I've ever been drawn to before. I used to race American Iron NASA in my 90s Camaro,
really?
And that was years ago, but now I'm an editor and stuff. And I was like, you are hired. And so through her, I found Eric.
Meant to be.
I'm gonna botch his name, but Eric Lobacz, Lobacz, and he was a great book cover guy for me.
Oh, that's great. No, it's, and it's so important. You got to have an editor who knows what you're talking about here, because I think Lindsay and I were both looking to, get you on something, right? Like, but
I hope you would.
All the details are there, very descriptive. I guess we should probably ask you to set the scene without giving the book away. This is a tale of redemption. It's a cautionary tale, as we talked about. The protagonist. You want to start there?
Yeah. So, basically we have Luke Thomas. He's young 20s. I don't remember his exact age off that. Young 20s. He's a street racer, right? He just finished an associate's degree and got his certifications in automotive stuff. And he works at a Chevy dealer. He races as far as he goes to Cars and Coffee, and basically chapter 1 starts off with him getting booked into Denver County Jail.
Yeah. Can we stop there for just a second? Because this was a very descriptive, I want to say passage, but that's probably not the word. Did you interview people? How did you, is there a little bit of you in this book, Steve? Break this down for us, because I learned more about getting booked into a jail, I think, than I've ever learned from a book before.
I have a very good friend of mine who has been in the system before, sadly. Okay. So I talked to him about it. I also have a very good friend in Larry McCarry Sheriff's. So I pinged a few questions off him, but the rest is really, you research, right? You can find a lot about the jail system online, right? You can go and you can see pictures and you can see what the jail system looks like, and you can see some of the programs and stuff like that. And then, so, interweaving this story, the book in totality is a fiction novel interwoven with reality, right? So it's like contemporary fiction. And so that's what I sought to do. And, some of the thoughts that Luke has as he's going in, I have to imagine myself, right? I'm not a prison guy, right? I only know about it from TV. These must be the thoughts that I would be thinking if I am getting checked into prison.
Oh, and we've all thought about it, right?
Yeah.
It's in the back of our
and I think you did a good job of capturing, just like you said, the kind of this can't be happening. The denial of this isn't real.
Because that's we see TV shows, they sentence you and the handcuffs are on and you're off and you're getting booked in. And that was it. And that was the real reality that Luke had to face, is that, you get, it's very easy to get speeding tickets and you get your license revoked, but then you can apply for a work permit. So that's my friend Zach. I'm going to shout out. He got his license revoked for counting, I know, but he's a track guy now, so we're happy with him.
Right.
But,
good job, Zach.
But, yes. But, and you can get your license as long as you use it for work. And then how many people actually, abide by those rules? It takes a long time. And, I have to imagine that by the time it's this is it, you are going to prison. the stark reality of that must just, it's fear.
Yeah.
Well, because I think there's so much in general, people go like, well, but it'll never happen to me. And then, like you said, there's a process of like, you lose your license, but you can still drive to work. And so it's so gradual that you'd be like, well, but there's got to be one more step in between me and jail.
Yeah, like I'm not a criminal, so I drove a car. Shoot me.
Right.
Right. No, it's something I really liked about the book is it was so well researched. I mean, the detail, you set the scene. It really, to me, almost read like a screenplay. So, I don't know, was that intentional?
Movie potential there.
Yeah.
Okay, so when I first started, I just started dreaming about some of the details and thinking about it. And at first I was like, this would make for such a great Amazon Prime series or something. And then I was like, I cannot be the guy who just says, will you read my screenplay? And my favorite author, I was literally just at a book event because he has a new book that came out last week. One of the things that he says is he always likes to have the source of truth to go back on. Okay. And I was like, and that's in the moment. I was like, you know what? I'm going to write the book. So who knows where this goes? It could go nowhere. Okay. I would love for it to be, passionate, inspiring, and get that big appeal. But I want there to be that source of truth where anybody could go back and see what the original intent of writing the book was. And so I decided this cannot be a screenplay to start. It needs to be a novel.
I love that. And yeah, then you have that kind of touchstone. You can see where everything jumps off from there and becomes the Time Attack Empire. And you heard it here.
The Time Attack.
That's right.
The Time Attack Empire.
Well, that's the thing, right? This could be a whole series, right? I mean, pretty easily if we get that lucky, right? I mean, and it's and I've seen a lot of the people in our community talk about it, post to social media about it. So I think you're getting a buzz, which is great.
That would be great.
Yeah, one of the things for me that I think connected with me is that Denver's not London, it's not Paris, it's not a literary city as as we know it. I think there've been a couple movies here, Things to Do in Denver When You're Dead, and but Denver's not real, it's not Chicago for that matter, right? I mean, it's just not on the map, right? When it comes to books and movies and things. So it was really neat to read a story, right, that referenced things in my own world. Whether it was the Adams Polishes, local, international business, but set here, right?
Right.
Headquartered here. To the tracks, right? That I've driven, which was cool. You got all the details right. Even Snarf's sandwiches, right?
Snarf sandwiches made it in there.
That's a real place.
That's a local joint. Yeah. I think it started in Boulder. Maybe we've got one not too far from me. We can walk to.
They're all over.
So much better, right, than your typical Subway or even
even like SCR Performance, with Mark Barry. Shout out. Yeah. Okay, they are a premier race dealer. Mark Baer is the owner. He wins all the NASA TT.
Oh, that's so funny.
In his class, and I had them do some work on my Corvette. I love those guys. They're really cool. Harvey in the book, he actually owns Boost District in Longmont, and he's kind of notorious for being one of the go-to tuner guys. Wine Country Motorsports. I was just down there. They stocked this book. They got a couple books from me, and they helped me out get my Hans device and my helmet. So again, I wanted to have that authenticity in there. That's because if you just make up places, you can just do whatever you want with it. And it's gotta have some reality in there.
Yeah.
Well, again, it gives it kind of an anchor. Like you talk about the book being the anchor for what you're trying to accomplish. And it's nice to kind of anchor the book with these little Easter eggs, especially for people that are local to Colorado. Because I know there was an author when I was growing up who lived in my town, and it was Dean Koontz. And so he would put these little Easter eggs of a street name or a whatever. And I remember reading that as a kid and being like, wait, what are we doing? So it's really fun, like you said, Ryan, to see the real names in a story.
Yeah. And Steve, I'll give you something else, just the vernacular, right? The phrasing of, turns of phrase and things, just these sound like people I know. I felt like if I didn't know these people, I met these people, right?
Wow.
Out and about at a Cars and Coffee or whatever, you really, the car casting. So we had a guy, Oscar winner, Robert Nagel, our buddy Robert. He's done Ford versus Ferrari. Basically every movie that's got, great,
all the good car stuff. Robert's
car action, right?
I think in the book, I quote the line. No, I took it from somewhere else, didn't I? Part three, I had the.
Well, there was one. Are you talking about the Sunny Hayes line?
Yeah, yeah. I took it from Sonny Hayes, but I almost put the quote in from Ford Ferrari with I think
The
it was
Carroll Shelby. Yeah,
yes, I almost
7,000
that one.
RPM.
Yes, I almost put that one in, and I was sorry I didn't mean to interrupt you, but I was like, well, nothing really revs to 7,000. Maybe the Porsche. I was like, I'm gonna go with the F1 quote.
Yeah. No, that stuff shows, with Robert, we talked about, kart casting. And so not just getting like the driving right and like the racing line has to be correct and all this, but casting cars almost as if you were casting people. And I thought you did a really great job of that. Like, oh yeah, that guy would drive a Z06.
Yes.
Oh yeah, that guy would drive an M3 or, the Cayenne for that matter.
Love
right?
it, right? Such a great car.
Yeah.
I think it's real, right? If you're in the car world, the car is kind of an extension of your personality or your interests. So for Liv, right, Luke's mom, very well established businesswoman, likes the sporty stuff, right? Her boyfriend is a race shop owner, so she's inspired. So she's got the Porsche, but she went for the hybrid that's even faster, which probably pisses them off sometimes, right?
Yeah.
And
but also kind of practical, right?
But also kind of practical.
Yeah.
Yes, exactly. And even at the Cars and Coffee, right? You have the football player who he wanted something with speed, but he's a big guy. So what's he going to drive? He's going to drive a Hellcat.
Yes.
Yes.
That was a funny detail.
Yes.
Yeah, where he's like, I'm enormous. What, I only fit in so many things.
Yeah. Like his foot catching on the thing.
Oh my God. Yes. As someone who wears size 14 himself, that is so
feel his
true.
pain.
It's just, absolutely. You snag the top of the toes, right?
I think, I think you had an episode where you just said, wasn't it the Alfa Romeo your foot was catching?
Oh yeah. And it's terrifying because not just an Alfa Romeo, but an Alfa Holix, like a $750,000 car or whatever. It's just like, this is not when you want to mess this up. And I will tell you, used to do a show years ago before I even met Lindsay called The Steering Committee with Doug Fogler here in town. And we had an episode that talked all about me getting a new 718 Cayman and breaking the throttle pedal assembly 3 times with my big giant clodhopper.
No way.
And and it's funny, because you talk about, details in cars and stuff. That was the base car. That was the 4-cylinder. That's a plastic unit. And I've had this GT4 now for several years. That's all metal, right? So it's like little details like that. But that's the kind of stuff that you got right in this
I'm
book,
so happy. Yeah, I mean, I'm an enthusiast, and so even like researching some of the small details, I found it fun. When I was building the cars in the book, I went on the Porsche's website. I was like, ooh, Algarve blue. I hope I said that right. I was like, what a cool color. If I was Liv, I would choose that color because it's elegant, but it's got some spice to it,
Yeah.
And then, I'm a sucker for yellow Corvettes, right? So Luke's car had to be yellow. Made sure I got I think it's called Velocity Yellow. I think it is for that. Made sure I got that paint code, right? The same thing with the red at the Hellcat. So I'm an enthusiast. I like stuff.
Absolutely. If we screw up, we occasionally will say something incorrectly. We hear about it, and I guess you could probably argue that's good, right? For buzz or whatever, but people will catch you. Yeah. People will catch you for sure, so there is a scene, talk about authenticity, that of all the scenes, it's the one that really just got to me, made me cringe. The one where it's a detailing scene. I'll leave it at that.
Oh God.
I
know.
A very nice car, and that hit way too close.
There was a little
home.
bit of real panic on both of our parts reading it.
I know. Yeah, and that look, we've all seen stories, or maybe we've had some experience with it ourselves, where detailing culture is like probably the fastest growing thing. There's so many products. There's so many things. Everyone's trying to, like ceramic coat their car and prep it and do all this stuff. And, Luke is, he's trying to prove his merit in the shop, and he's trying to show like, I can add value. I'm not just a porter,
Right.
and that trust is bestowed upon him by the shop's owner, Nick. And so, some mistakes can happen.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And it's another inflection point. It's another thing where, like, if you're ceramic coating your car and you don't get it up fast enough, right? You get it off fast enough and it starts to haze or something, like, take a breath. Okay. We can figure it out.
It's terrifying.
Right. It's going to be okay.
Yeah. And so, that scenario was just another level of inflection point. And I also wanted to use it to show and I think Nick makes a statement around this about like the most important thing about being a race car driver or racing is not necessarily being the fastest guy on the track, but you have to constantly respond to variables and different things and unexpected. And you have to do so decisively, but also calmly. And if you lose that emotion in if you let that emotion control yourself, right, you're gonna make a mistake.
Yeah. Hit me doubly hard because I actually have an appointment tomorrow. Our friends at Spider Auto Detailing, buddy Jaden's coming out to detail my GT4, and so I think I'm a little sensitive right now, a little vulnerable.
Are you going to make him read the book first? And you're like, pay particular attention to this scene, and now you may go near my car.
That's right. Yeah, Steve, I had to stop and sort of like got the vapors for a second. Like it really, I got into it, and it was just like, the fear of.
I had to keep reading because I'm like, how is this going to, like, what are they going to do?
I know, especially because, I don't want to give the car or the details too much away. But imagine that car. And imagine being them. You're like, oh my God, Steve, car has such a title.
That would be the one. When I was in high school, I'll never forget this guy's name, Stuart Altemeyer. He was a year older than me. He's a lawyer now somewhere. Go look him up. Much more successful than me, but he was one of these guys that was, go-getter. And he decided to open a detail shop. He took on an XJS. Remember the big V12, Jaguar?
Oh, yeah, Jaguars.
Yeah, decided he was going to steam clean that engine. Pretty quickly that engine was ruined, and that was the end of that enterprise. But there's something just when you're working with something high, it's going to be the expensive car, right? Is what I'm getting at, right? And back then that was expensive as anything in Indianapolis, Indiana. So those details. You did mention a podcast in the book.
I did.
I read the word podcast. I'm like, oh yeah, please let it be us. Please let it be us. Maybe future editions. But what was that podcast?
Okay, so the podcast is the Perfect Lap podcast, and the reason why I chose them, not only do I love what they do, but they are at least for me, they're the real source for like time attack racing.
Yeah, exactly.
They talk a lot about grid life. They talk a lot about the major racing events and time attack. Jaeger and Kilgore, they are extremely knowledgeable on the subject. They are super passionate about it. They talk very well. And, it's really informative. After a grid life, or a global time attack, or, pick your event, they're the ones that I go back to really understand like what happened. Because, when you're watching these events live, I mean, like Grid Life, Road Atlanta, right? Yeah. There's 5 or 6 sessions that are like 15 minutes long. And then there's a podium sprint that's 3 laps. And all you get to see is the car that the camera's focusing on.
Right.
It's not a wheel-to-wheel race where all these cars, and so you get to see the tidbits they pick up, but some of the other stuff, like, for example, and I love them for this. One of the things, they featured this driver, Jimmy Rock, and he has a Honda Civic that is blowing people away. And something I didn't realize, they mentioned this at Road Atlanta. There was another car in the unlimited class, 2,000 horsepower Camaro, like a 67 Camaro, super aeroed out. Like they even redid the front to make it like a spoiler instead of that flat, like where the headlights. I mean, it's a very, very awesome car. And they did this breakdown of Jimmy Rock. Yes. And they did this video. They were looking at the timing of Jimmy and his extremely modified unlimited Honda Civic, and they're like, look at this. He is only like 2 or 3 seconds off this 2,000 horsepower Camaro in his 500 horsepower front wheel drive Honda Civic.
Wow.
And when you watch him go through the turns, it's incredible. Yeah. And so there's things like that, as a viewer, you can't tell how fast people necessarily are going through the turns. Either way, they do a really great job. They might pick me up to be on the podcast.
Nice, they should. A little
bit.
Look how good you are here, right? And the minor leagues, right? So they should pick you up. It's that's shout out to them. It's you mentioned Civic too. There's a Civic Type R. I think it's a 17. Type R in here.
Yes, 17 type.
Yeah,
type
and
R.
that also was exactly the right car for that character. So kudos.
Yeah, I thought so too. He's going. I can't remember the character's name off the top of my head, but he's a kid. He's in college for engineering, right? What's a college? RAF. Thank you.
That's right.
I'm like, what's like a college sporty car? You know what? A Civic Type R. You know, you can put a little exhaust on it. He did a couple mods to it. That's like the perfect car, and it's a super great sports car. I love Type Rs.
Yeah. I had to laugh because when I first got this GT4, I rolled up to the Conoco or whatever is there in Golden, right, by the School of Mines. And I was so proud of this thing. And I was also so pissed off that no one had come up to me at a gas station yet and said, hey, nice car or whatever. Well, that's where it happened for the first time. And there was a college kid in a Type R, it's like, you read their minds, it's so
foreshadowing.
Yeah. Just again, authenticity. It's so important. It just takes one small thing to take you out of a story, right?
And that's that it goes back to casting a car, right? And same thing with the football player, right? Like in my mind, if he's got a full ride scholarship to CU, he's making a little bit of money because college athletes can make some money, right? So the next step up cost wise from a Type R is probably like a Hellcat, right? And so I could, it checks out.
Yeah, absolutely.
Well, and I love thinking about that part of it because it's part of building the character. Like you said, it's an extension of the character. And we've talked about that before. People will say like, it's a way to indicate something about yourself to the rest of the world, because sometimes they'll see the car before they see you, or it's an extension of your outfit or your personality or whatever. And so I love the amount of thought that you put into finding the right car, even the right color for each character, because it really did paint a picture and it introduced the characters through without you saying, well, this person is a go-getter or this person is a whatever. It's a way to illustrate who these people are indirectly.
I love that. Yeah, I love that. I spent a lot of time thinking about it, and I love that.
The guy in the semi-private jet, right? We all know that type, right? We all know that type, right? And he's going to have it on Instagram too, right? So, I appreciate that. Well, let's talk about your car because, Lindsay and Dan and I have realized if we stop, talking about Porsches once in a while and mention, other cars like Ferraris and Corvettes and, BMWs,
M3s,
then that's great SEO for us. And you've got a Corvette. So we M3s, so tell us about your car.
Okay. So I have a 2025 C8 Stingray Z51.
Nice.
I love that car. It's the best thing I've ever driven, I've done a couple things to it because my goal with the car, ultimately I want to race in NASA TT3. I'm working up to that. I'm always to make sure that my times are pretty competitive before I just jump into it and then, pay the money and kind of walk away, so far away from the group, it's an amazing car. I've really never been in a mid-engine car and in a track environment. And it's incredible to me, it's a different experience. I'm sure a Porsche guy, right? Like when you do it and it just works, you're like, I can't even believe this. Yeah. It's so smooth. And anybody that I've taken in it, they, you're hauling down the track, the DCT hits, it's so smooth, I've done some upgrades so I'm not crashing into walls at Laguna Seca.
Good plan.
Too soon.
Too soon. So, I've got, so I've done a couple things. I've done AP brakes in the front. I got a really great used deal, Marketplace, shout out, right? So I got a great used deal. I put AP brakes.
Sorry, Steve, is Marketplace where you want to buy brakes?
Well,
I'm joking.
A fair question.
Sure
you got me. I'll say this: if they're AP Racing brakes, you can probably buy them off a dumpster and they'll still work. True.
No, that's awesome.
So I got So I have the AP brakes in the front, which was such a weight savings too, like 20 pounds a wheel, probably. Wow. Huge difference. I did the sway bars. SCR Performance helped me with the sway bars because you have to drop like a front subframe or something to get the sway bar in. It's kind of asinine.
But the payoff is worth it, right?
Yeah.
The payoff's so worth it. Yeah. I just did an added radiator mod that it's kind of interesting. When GM ships these cars to the Middle East, Abu Dhabi or whatever, they throw in a third, fourth, whatever the number is, radiator. And we don't get it here in the States. And,
sounds like something Porsche would do, to be honest.
Oh, really? Interesting. Yeah. You can buy these parts direct from GM.
Yeah.
Or there's a company that did a little testing and put it together. And because what I was noticing is on the summer temperatures, we're at altitude here. Yep. I'm hitting oil temps of like 260, 265 sometimes. The coolant's getting up there, 230, 235. Certainly not engine blowing temperatures, but to the point where it's going to start pulling timing. I definitely saw my lap times drop like a second and a half or 2 seconds. Oh. So I went ahead, I added that radiator in there. I got the harness bar so I have some 5-point harnesses in it.
In High Plains, if you're not local here, it can be 85 in Denver, and it feels like 110 at High Plains.
Yes.
There are a few trees, but it's pretty open. It's
Kansas almost.
Yeah, it really is. It feels that way. In fact, it's so Kansas that oftentimes big storms will roll in while you're out there, as I'm sure you've experienced. But
yeah, I had a friend of mine. He has a famous picture of his. I think it's an S14 going down the back straight. There's a tornado in the background.
Yeah,
That's
High
a
Plains. Yeah,
that is a framer. Yeah.
It sounds like
Steve,
Oregon Raceway Park. That's like you can be out there. It's brilliantly sunny, and then just like line squalls come in. You're plastered up against the fence because of the wind, and then like 15 minutes later, all better, sunny again.
Yeah, Lindsay's our resident track expert here.
Love it.
That car show. Dan and I, we dabble, but Lindsay grew up on the track. And I think probably, we can both back up the mid-engine thing. It's kind of like a cheat code. Lindsay's got a 16 GT4, I've got a 20, and it's just, you just feel like you're getting away with something. But Lindsay's also got an M3. What are your other cars currently? You've got
an E36 M3. That's the track car.
Love it.
And it's a sedan, but it's now a 2-seater, of course, because everything got pulled out. So that was another scene where you're like, I don't remember which car it was, but you said everything's been stripped out and it's got a cage in it. And I'm like, yep, that tracks. Like, pun intended.
It does track, yeah.
Yeah, it does.
track.
And then I have a 2007 BMW X3 that's a manual.
Oh, that's a rarity. That's
so
nice.
It's pretty fun. But I met someone
awesome.
this morning. I met a gal this morning, and we were chatting, and she said, "What do you do?" And I mentioned the podcast, and she said, "Well, what's the podcast about?" And I said, "It's about cars." And she goes, "Oh, I love cars." And she said,
Nice.
"You guys will like this." She said, "What do you guys talk about?" And so I was telling her, kind of generally, and she said, "Well, do you ever talk about the Honda Fit?" And I said, "I don't. Should we?" And she said, "I have one, and I think they're the best." I'm like, "Yeah, it sounds like you have thoughts." And she said, "And I did a stage 2 transmission swap, and so she turned it into a manual."
Oh, wow.
Nice. So
Yeah.
actually in grid life, I think it's like one of the bottomest classes of Time Attack. The most popular car is a Honda Fit.
All right. I am a huge fan. When my wife and daughter and I moved to Denver from Chicago about 11 years ago, we had a 997 Carrera S and a Honda Fit, both manual. And we, I got the Porsche later, but we came out here in that Honda Fit, plants in the back seat, everything else. It was a manual. It was, 80, it might be 110 horsepower, right? I mean, that's what my 81 320i BMW had, so many years ago.
Yeah.
And it was fine in Chicago, right? It's a city commuter. And I'll never forget the first time we tried to go up like Floyd Hill. So Lindsay, Floyd Hills. So I-70 going into the mountains from Denver, and having that car with the, 2 adults and a baby, basically.
Right.
In third gear, just pegged, and just trying to maintain maybe 60 miles an hour, and
the auto
it was within a year we got a turbo, Tiguan, right? Just because we
You're
needed
like,
something.
this is not going to work.
But that said, that car shifted like a sewing machine. It was quick enough in traffic. It was all glass, which I think is the most underrated, sort of thing we don't have.
Visibility is a good thing.
Right. Yeah. Visibility, the biggest safety thing you can have. Wonderful car. Would still have that car today as a third or fourth car. But got involved in one of those Colorado hailstorms. And that totaled the car. She made money then. But I always wanted to, if nothing else, turn that into a track car, right? Because it's kind of like a built-in excuse, right? Because you've got Miatas flying by or whatever. But it was just such an inherently good car, right? Anyway, all the praise in the world for a Fit.
There you go.
There's like this. Love it. There's like this polar opposite with cars on the track, and the Honda Fit falls into the category where if you get past, doesn't matter. You're in a Honda Fit. Yeah. But if you pass people, oh boy, are you cooking? And it's the same opposite excuse with like a GT3 RS, right?
Yeah.
If you're passing people in a GT3 RS, like pat yourself on the back. Congratulations.
Right.
But if people are passing you, you better look the other way.
Yeah, if you get to be the driver that's passing the GT3 RS, you're like, good on me. I did it.
Yep.
I'm accomplishing things.
Yeah.
So thanks to my new friend Grace for inspiring us to talk about the Honda Fit.
Well, hey, Grace.
That's awesome. And if you don't mind, I just, something that I was really passionate about, bringing it back to the book, females in the motorsport industry. Like, you see this with like F1. There's really popular female race engineers. There's up and coming female racers in this, and it was really important to me that the protagonist Luke, he's actually guided along this story by some really strong female figures, right? We have Emmy, who's the really brainy like engineer, Sabrina, who's like the kind of like edgy, mechanic racer. She's kind of based off a friend's girlfriend or fiance that I know. And Liv, obviously his mom, like again, strong, independent business owner. And so I wanted to capture that too, because, even if it is mostly men reading the book or who knows, I just wanted to highlight the fact that like the space is, nobody cares about who you are or what your background is or, what your opinions are about anything in a racetrack or cars. We all come together in this car environment. And it was important to me to tell that story, or, write that story.
Yeah. And they were very believable characters too. I feel like I know people like that. And there are a lot of women involved with the race scene and the vintage race scene here in Colorado, which is awesome. But Lindsay, sorry, I cut you off.
No, you're good. But I loved that the women were involved. And I wondered if you could share, like, how did you get involved with track driving? Because that's kind of what started this whole thing, and your love of riding.
Yeah, good question.
Okay. So, with track stuff, this goes back to, I don't even know, 2012 or 2013.
That was 2 years ago, Steve. What are you talking about?
Yeah, I know, right? So I was the smartest kid ever, and I had some motorcycles as a kid, like kind of small stuff. The very first like real sports motorcycle I had, of course, a CBR 1000. Why would anybody start on anything else, right? And I had started riding it, and I had a friend of mine who his landlord was really into track racing and stuff like that, and he was like, "Come on out," he helped me get a suit and stuff like this, and I told myself, before I should do this, before I really take my 1000 on the track, let me go there's a company out in San Diego called SoCal Supermoto, shout out to them. And they basically, at the time it was like $250 and you get the bike, you get the track time, and it's on go-kart tracks, and you learn on a supermoto bike, right? Which is like dirt bikes with stiffer suspension and, like 200 or, street tires, right? And I fell in love with it just like that. I'm out doing that track day. It was amazing. And that just like catapulted me. I just continually got more and more and more into track or private motorsports, whether it's dirt or something like that, because I did my CBR 1000 for a bunch of times, and, you kind of pour one out. That bike got stolen, but then I was able to buy a supermoto because, the insurance, right? And then it happens.
Silver lining, right?
Silver, God, so sad. That bike was so beautiful. And then I raced supermoto for a bit, and then the part that I really loved about supermoto was the dirt section, because that's the other thing with supermoto is you're on street tires, but there's a dirt section in between the track section. And then I realized, man, swinging that rear out, that's so much fun. So then I got into doing dirt bikes and motocross and enduro, and finally came the time in my life where the high school dream car I was ready to buy, which was an STI. Okay.
Oh, sure.
And I said, I'm going to track
nice
this car.
Choice.
I've been
Subarus
doing it
here.
Yeah.
It's like, it's a little bit of a don't meet your heroes story, but I still have some, you know what I mean? Still have some heart for it. But, and then I said, okay, I've been doing this for a while on two wheels. I'm ready to, I want to do this in cars. And so I started doing it with the Subaru, did 5, 6, 7 track days. Did realize due to some, fallbacks with the platform that it maybe was not the car for me, for someone who just wanted to go and be able to go 20, 30 minutes repetitively, and then really get that seat time in. And now I've got the Corvette, which is just phenomenal.
Yeah. Did you grow up wanting Corvettes, or, what was on your wall as a kid other than motorcycles?
What was on my wall was the Smokey and the Bandit, 1978 Burt Reynolds Firebird. I don't even know.
Can I guess your age, Steve?
Right.
Younger than you think. But I was going to say,
I feel like that's a vintage. Steve was making vintage choices even as a kid.
Okay, yeah, you do seem pretty young, but I was hoping, you were a little older, but yeah.
I don't even know how I got into it. Somebody gifted me in some random birthday, because I was like into cars.
Okay.
Like a toy, like a Firebird toy, and it was a 73. I remember the toy, and it was red and had the screaming eagle on the hood, and I was like, I need that. And then I remember I was in summer camp at like 11, and one of the camp counselors, I swear his name was Andrew. I still remember that. And I think he was kind of calling out at one of the other female camp counselors, and he had a black Firebird.
Oh,
right. And so my first car as a kid was a $1,000 1974 Firebird with a inline six 3-speed manual on the floor. And so that's how I learned to drive, you know, and then I had a 97 Firebird, which, you know, I worked at Wendy's and Publix, and I saved up and I bought a 97 Firebird, and, you know, I just went from there.
Oh yeah. Those are great cars.
It's like the automotive. It's like the automotive version of like a baby animal imprinting on their parent. Like
yes, right.
Imprinted on the Firebird.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. It's funny you mentioned that the Smoking the Bandit. Dan, who's not here tonight, is a huge fan. He's from the UK. I think, you know, he was way more into it than even I was over here. But yeah, that was a seminal movie. And, you know,
Jackie Gleason, come on.
Yeah. And watching it now, it's kind of amazing that was ever made, but
I know.
It
but
definitely
that's what makes it so great is you go back and you're like, this is fascinating.
Yeah,
I mean, it was definitely, it's one of those classic car movies for sure.
And that's one of the great things about fiction too, is that whenever you write at that point in time snapshot, you know, very rarely is someone you go back and be like, I can't believe I said that or whatever, you know, like it's part of that era and that beauty of it.
Yeah. Just real quick, I want to give a shout out to a friend of ours, a friend of the show, Willis Wood. He is putting on his very first Cars and Coffee here in Denver.
That's awesome.
This weekend. It's Saturday, May 23rd. Willis was a sponsor of my previous podcast. He had a business called Rhino Signworks, and he's now moved on, but he's still into cars. He has an M Coupe. He's got a 190E Cosworth, which is a super cool car.
Wow.
And he's got a lot of car friends in the community, Automobile Rally. Anyway, they're all putting on this Cars and Coffee Saturday, May 23rd from 10 to 2 at the Denver Design District, which is at 675 South Broadway in Denver. If you know the big giant yellow sculpture, it looks like a stack of French fries. That's the place.
And now I'm hungry.
And now you're hungry, and you should definitely go check this out. I just wanted to get that in for him because, Steve, you're a local guy. I think we probably know a lot of the same people. Lindsay knows this. I've talked about this before, but we have a really tight car community here in Colorado and in Denver. I think we have a very outsized car community. The quality of the cars that are here, I don't know if it's just the monies that's here, the streets. It's just the roads, rather. It's just it's a fantastic car community. You've lived other places. What do you think is different about the car community here in Colorado?
That's a good question. I see a lot of variety, and I think when you're living in California, I grew up in South Florida, what you really see, you see exotics, you see the big stuff. Out here, you get a lot more Jeeps that are crazy modified. You get the Broncos, right? The guys that do the off-road. All those kind of really cool cars are out here. I hat-tipped to the author I was talking about earlier, but I hat-tipped with his LS3 Land Cruiser. That would be a car that you would... That would be a car that you would see out here in Colorado. It would be a super modified Land Cruiser. And so I think you get some of the really cool things out here in Colorado that, may not necessarily appeal to the San Diego or the Miami elite.
Sure. Yeah.
What do they say in Anchorman? San Diegoan.
Yeah.
And I think, people drive them here too. We have such wonderful roads. I think I'd put our roads up to anyone's, Southern California included. We've just, it's fantastic because those roads are.
Fighting words, huh?
I will put Squaw Pass, or I'm sorry, it's called Mount Blue Sky, against any road in the country. But
there you go.
The only thing I'll say, is California roads for sure you can drive year-round. Florida, they don't really have any good roads anyway. But you
got to watch out for alligators.
Yeah, California's pretty great, and I think we've talked about this before, but it is kind of the mothership for those of us, who don't live there. Peterson Museum is there, and just the great roads and just the iconic stuff from the movies, and you got the ocean right there. I mean, it's just even if you're out for a cruise, it's pretty wonderful. I mean, it's just it's center of the automotive universe. I guess there's a reason Fast and Furious was filmed there, and I guess
I'll tell you what,
Denver,
But I'll tell you what, on a California fall, You're not going to drive up to Estes Park and see elk in the
True.
rut.
True.
You know,
True.
and so there's some really awesome things that we get in Colorado driving up to the Estes and, you know, the road that just kind of winds all around the Rocky Mountain National Forest. It's just so beautiful up there. And so that's something that's really unique, is the picturesque and atmosphere that comes along with it.
Yeah. Yeah. We're pretty fortunate here. You know, and Lindsay's, you know, fortunate because you get to drive, you know, half the time in SoCal and half the time up in Seattle.
Oh, cool.
So
Yeah.
get a bit of both. But Lindsay just posted, if you haven't seen it on Instagram, just posted her Mudfest video.
Oh, I haven't seen it. I haven't seen it.
But it was very dusty. There was no mud.
It was Dust Fest this year.
In fact, you played, what is it? Dust in the
Dust
Wind.
in the Wind.
You know, as your
I was putting it together and I'm like, all right, what song? Let me put in Dust and see what comes up. And that came up and I went, yeah, that's no question. I got to use that song. It was too perfect.
What did you guys think about, if you don't mind, what did you guys think about like some of the musical references in the book? Did you enjoy that? Did you think it was a drawaway?
It's a good question. So I'm not a big listener of any of those bands, but I still appreciated it, right? Because it was just sort of one more level of authenticity, you know. Had you had the bands that I listened to in the book, I would have had some major questions for you. So I think it was probably good that you went with what you did. But Lindsay, did that connect with you? I mean, are those bands that we're a little older than you too, Steve?
I know. I think that's part of it. Is I don't know the bands, but I appreciated the sort of scene setting. Like it rounds it out. It's like including the colors of the car and the details and all that. It's sort of like, and you've done this a couple times while we've been chatting. Like you're very good at painting a picture, and so it definitely drew me in because you can sort of feel like you're in the car and you know what the car looks like and you know what they're wearing and you know what they're listening to, and you just sort of like, it's immersive. So I liked it.
Good, because that's like the next factor when you're driving, right? If you're not listening to that car show, you might be listening to, you know,
what are you even doing?
I know, right? But you know, you might have your favorite CD in. You might have your favorite Spotify, you know, song.
We're old enough for CDs.
And
the CD changer, though, I did appreciate that being 50.
Yes.
My truck still has a CD. I think it has a single CD.
I remember my mom's Mercedes in the 90s. You had to like pull a body panel off, and then there would be like the CD changer, and you would pull the tray out, you know, and you would load the tray, and then you put it in, and you make sure it registers that the tray is in.
And then those 6 CDs are what's in the car for the life of the car.
Forever.
Someone in our circles just posted on Instagram today about someone who goes through a lot of cars, you know, auction cars, you know, and how, you know, he always looks forward to seeing what's in the CD player because a lot of people stopped listening to CDs 10 years ago. So there was one, it was I think it was a mixtape called Sexy Singles. You never know what's going to be on a CD like that. And fun fact, this Porsche behind me is a 20, but they made this up through, I guess, 26, I think, also has a CD player and had a CD player. I think it was one of the last cars to have a CD player, but it's the way it's situated. It's just sort of above the panel. You'd never know it was there. Thank God. You know, it's not something you want to advertise, you know, but
come on, it's retro.
I was shocked to discover that it had a CD player.
Well, what's so funny about the truck is that it had memory. And so you could put the CD in and basically rip the CD onto the internal memory of the truck and then take the CD out. So that solves the problem. You're not going to accidentally give your CDs away when you sell the car, which I feel like is
that's
not a problem that many people are dealing with these days anymore.
Yeah, that's kind of interesting.
I'm the oldest one here by several years, I'm sure. And I do remember when CD players were new and, you know, it was such a big deal. And I went out and I got a Kenwood like a Discman, right? But it was really for the car. And I was so proud. My dad had an E3325 at the time. Of course, didn't come with a CD player, but you could use the tape deck to play. And I
was going to say the cassette tape with the wire on it.
Right. It sounded like
I was literally going to say, like, has everyone done that? But
and, you know, you know, I don't think we made it out of the driveway before that damn thing started skipping, you know, and I was so disappointed. So if you wanted to listen to the CDs, you had to basically have it in your lap or hold it and sort of compensate as you. It was just such a mess. And
or you're like driving one-handed so you can hold the disc man.
Totally. The price of being cool, you know, cassette singles, you know, the things kids, you know, at least those didn't skip, right?
Well, the M3 had a 5-disc changer, but it was in the trunk. I mean, so many of them were in the trunk, and you're like, I'm not going into the trunk to change my music all the time. I mean, that's why you'd load it up, and that would be your soundtrack for the rest of time.
You know, how far we've come, right? So
Good old days, right?
yeah.
You'll probably notice in the book, there's like a little bit of a love letter to the G80 M3 in there,
Yes.
kind of like, and that comes from my wife's car. She has an M3 comp, and
Excellent choice.
Nice.
She has good
yeah,
taste.
for real.
Nicely done, Kate.
Yeah.
And she did the individual color of liquid copper, which is
But that's gorgeous.
astronomical. I
Oh,
can send you a
wow.
picture of it sometime.
Yes, please
And
do.
I will. When you're in that car, and there's just something that BMW really captures that's such perfectly like a track capable car, and then just a button press or whatever, and it's like this luxury cruiser. It's quiet. It's so comfortable that everything looks modern and neat. Right? There's just enough tactile things, buttons and switches, but to where it's not just like touchscreen, but you have a little bit of that too.
Yeah.
And then next thing you know, you go to 125 by accident.
Right,
You know what I mean?
because it's so good.
Yeah.
Well,
you
it's
set
sort of
that
the
so
luxury,
perfectly.
the restraint of like you have what you need and it's lovely, but you don't have more than you need.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. Hey, speaking of romance, what did Kate think about that scene early in the book?
Okay. When I first wrote that, I had told her that I wrote kind of a spicy scene in the book.
Yeah.
And she's like, I need you to read it to me. And I was
Oh.
like,
Out loud?
and
Okay.
out loud. And I
I
think
like
got,
her.
I know, I got like 5 words in and I was like, I can't do this. I can't do this. And it's sometimes I think about like, should I have put that in there? Should I have not put that in there? But I'm happy I did. It's hard. Yeah,
I just didn't know it was going to go there, but it
I
kind
know.
of set the relationship. And before you got on, I was talking with Lindsay, just sort of the state of mind of the people, and they're not, well, I don't want to give too much away, but it sets the scene for later, the relationship that is. So,
and that's what I wanted to portray is like, just like people in love and they're adults, right?
Yeah.
And this is life.
yeah, we're all adults,
Right. It's well-rounded. Yeah. Yeah. It was interesting. Like, were you, because the relationships, and again, not to give anything away, but like some of the relationship frameworks are not traditional, or, they're based on, like you said, like some of the characters' histories have colored how they've lived their lives, or like how they've set their lives up when the book starts. And were you drawing from like personal experience or people that or was that just something that you came up with?
I think I'm a little bit of a romantic at heart. And so I think I kind of had, where it goes with that couple. I kind of had, because they're on a journey of their own, right?
Right.
And I kind of had that in mind where I was like, man, that would be so fantastic. I built the Liv character, obviously a little bit off my wife, but the story of her profession and things like that. My friend Zach Mom, she has a very, they work on a very successful escrow business. And when I was thinking about that type of person, I was like, that would be a really great role for Liv, the character, right?
Yeah.
And then watching their relationship grow over the course of the book and where that landed, and I just thought it was, I thought that was really great. And
I was very happy. I mean, I love a happy ending. That's it.
There's a clip.
not like
Pun intended. Absolutely.
Steve, this is the first book you've ever written, right?
Yeah, well, I wrote a book in 4th grade. Okay, like one of those kids' books.
Sure. So this was not that. You've grown. Yeah. This was fantastic, and I hope you'll I hope this turns into a second and a third book. I hope that the podcast and the next book is us. But it's really a great book. And here's the cover. So when you see it in the bookstore,
Time Attack.
you know what you're looking for. Time Attack, Steve Schlosser. It does what a good book should, in that you find yourself a little bit in each of these characters, right? And it covers the spectrum of emotions too, and just really reads authentically, like we've talked about. So really well done, man. I mean, hit it out of the ballpark this first time up. Good job.
Bravo.
Thank you. And I just I hope the readers really enjoy it. I hope that when you read a fiction novel, you kind of take a little bit of that character with you, and I hope that this entices anybody. Like, let's go to the track. You know, if you're in Colorado, reach out to me. I do passengers all the time. I have someone coming out with me this Friday. She has a Mini Cooper S, and she said, I'm interested what it's like. I'm kind of scared to take my car. I said, come out and ride with me for a few laps, ride with my friend for a few laps. And then next time you can drive your car. Yeah. And so that's what I'm passionate about, right? Is getting people to the track. And I hope that message comes through the book. And I hope that it inspires, but it also entertains.
Absolutely. No, our friend of the show, Bruce Meyer, was just with him recently, and I got a thank you note from him, and he very famously signs all his correspondence with Never Lift. You were kind enough to sign our books for us, and you've got an almost as good of a, Never Lift is pretty amazing, right? I mean, that's epic, but take it to the track, and really that's what this book is about. That's what you're about, and a bit of advice in there for all of us. So Steve Schlosser, thank you so much for joining us tonight on That Car Show. We should probably tell people what your website is, how to find you, where to Amazon. I'm sure this book is available. Other places, Wine Country. Yeah. So
Wine
County, Wine Country.
No, it's Wine Country. Wine Country okay. Motorsports. If you're local, you can buy a copy from them. Otherwise, it's available on Amazon. Search for Time Attack Steve Schlosser. You'll find it. You can go to my website, timeattackbook.com, and that will take you to Amazon. If you want to reach out, if you want a signed copy that says take it to the track, there's a contact me. I'll gladly send you one. Or if you want to come to the track, that's a great way to get me too. You can follow me on social media. My personal account, Super Steve 921, but there's also a Time Attack Book. On Instagram, you can find me. So, thank you again. And for all the readers who, read this book, inspired by this book, thank you so much.
Thanks for joining us, Steve. So it's That Car Show. And until next time,
remember, always be driving. Thank you so much for telling your enthusiast friends about us, liking and subscribing. And Steve, of course, thanks for joining us. And we will see you all next week.